Computer Society of India Trivandrum Chapter, Project Management Institute Kerala Chapter, Intersociety Trivandrum Chapter, Vakam Maulana Foundation Trust Trivandrum, Life Member Affinity Group Kerala Section, IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Kerala Chapter, the Institute of Electronics and Telecommunications Engineering. So today we are extremely honored to have retired Lieutenant Colonel Col.L.Shri Harsha, past President of Project Management Institute, Bengaluru, as a speaker of our session, Disciplined Agile, the new arsenal of project manager. So now I invite Neha and Christopher to welcome the gathering.
A warm good evening to one and all. I'm Neha and Christopher, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 99th weekly webinar series. Moving on to my assigned duty, firstly, I welcome the guest of honor of our today's session, respected Lieutenant Colonel Col.L.Shri Harsha, PMI, Bengaluru past President. I welcome you, sir. Next, I welcome respected Dr. K.C. Ravindranath Sir, the chair and the leader of Intersociety weekly webinar series. I welcome you, sir. I also welcome the volunteers of today's session, Bridget Joy, Akshay Nair, Adityan Yes, and Adla T. Bashir to the 99th webinar series. I wholeheartedly welcome all the coordinating societies, professional community, and the talented participants to this evening. Once again, welcome all of you to the 99th weekly webinar. Thank you.
Now, Ms. Akila Gaurishankar will formally introduce the speaker before we get into the talk actually. You are welcome, Akila.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It's my privilege to welcome and introduce our speaker of the day, Colonel L. Harsha. He is a seasoned professional project professional with over 30 years of experience, and he has been a great volunteer with Project Management Institute, with even the global level volunteering also. So he is actually a role model for each one of us in PMI. He has executed challenging projects, and his industry verticals are diverse, like construction, name it, anything, like construction, manufacturing, IT. So he is there. He has proved his skills in the project management field in all the industry verticals, I should say, and across the globe, actually. He is actually one of the one among the three who have received the greatest award of Eric Jennett Project Management Excellence Award from PMI, and he received it in 2019, which is actually the best project, which is a proof for his being a best in the project management field. And it's a pride for us Indians that he is just one of the three Indians who have got this great award from Project Management Institute. And who else other than him can give us a insight into the disciplined agile methodology, which is introduced by PMI. So I'm so happy that he's consented to give us the insights into the disciplined agile theme. Thank you and welcome, Harsha.
Thank you, Akila, for the introduction. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
And am I audible? Loud and
Yes,
clear?
you are, sir.
Yes,
you are
sir.
audible.
Great, thank you. So when I was asked that this is a mixed crowd of people, veterans, college students, and predominantly from the IT sector, I thought I'll just pick up a topic which is hot and relevant in today's professional world to speak of, because project managers are aspiring to get into this domain. So the objective in the next 30-35 minutes is to just give you a brief overview, which is almost a surface skimming of a very vast subject which has been in existence for quite some time, but getting exposed currently and due to the developments in the economic world and the way the business is done all over the world. So there are new developments which are happening. So I thought I'll just share my perspectives on this topic. And a disclaimer in this whole regard is, firstly, this is not what PMI's views are. This is my views based on the experience of experimenting with traditional project management and multiple other methodologies, including the discipline Agile. And secondly, the other one is, it's just a very high level surface skimming that we are going to do. You may have to put in a little extra effort to understand this in detail. So the agenda, I just have basically 4 headings. Akila, is the noise from my side or from somebody else's side?
No, we don't hear any noise, sir.
Voice is there. The admin, please mute everybody.
I think it's better now. Okay, thank you. So I'll just cover it under these 4 headings. One is just take you through a quick evaluation of project management, because it is essential to set the context for the discussion. And then we'll try to understand discipline Agile slightly at a very superficial level. And then more importantly, from a practitioner's perspective, we would be more interested in what is it for me as an individual or as a business leader or as a project manager, because ultimately it's a question of how we are going to adopt this to your working and making it a part of your working style and culture. And of course, I'll throw the house open for discussions at the end. So, like project management is nothing new. It's been there for centuries. This, I think a lot of people will be able to correlate. That is on the left side, we have the Madurai Meenakshi temple, a huge complex, and the scale at which it was built in those days, almost 1,500 years ago. You can imagine when, today with a lot of automation, tools and techniques available for us, the challenges that we face, you can just visualize the challenges which they would have had it in those times, looking at the scales, the proportions, the distributions, the positioning, whole lot of complex situations. Still they had managed with some methodology. There was some order in the madness, which we think was there at that point of time. But then the way they had done the work is a classical example of a principle or a methodology, which is something akin to traditional or conventional project management, which you have today. And of course, today, when you have these programs of space programs or any other program which is multi-project, integrating multiple disciplines and verticals like mechanical engineering, methodology, fuel technology, IT, remote sensing, multiple domains. So project management per se as a profession and as a methodology has evolved over a period of time in different forms. But unfortunately, there is not much of a documentation on how it was being done in the earlier days. Today in the management space, when we look at project management, it's a growing subject. Anybody who claims that they know everything about project management, I think is fooling themselves. It's still like the typical elephant and the 5 blind men who are trying to figure out what project management is. So today in the working, why I'm telling this is, today in the working space, the age group of people who are involved in projects and programs varies from freshers who are just out of college, who are hardly in their 20s, early 20s, to very senior professionals who are there in their 70s and 80s, who are coming as consultants, advisors and all that. So the knowledge base of all these people is so huge. It extends from, the conventional, what we have, the plan, do, check and act cycle, which is the traditional methodology, which has been officially documented in management books. This is probably the first recorded evidence of some semblance to managing our projects better. Thereafter, PMI came into the scene, and then it's almost 50 years now that PMI has been in existence. and they started putting the system into a more organized manner. So the first stage was getting it into 5 processes, which was the initiate, the plan, execute, monitor, control, and close. And then further refinement based on developments happening all over the world, PMI started collating. And then we started the knowledge area concept, where we had about 10 knowledge areas, different. And then recently, it has shifted from the knowledge area concept to processes, from processes to principles. And there are 3 domains which PMI feels is very, very critical for managing a project successfully. One is the people part. The other one is the processes which we use to manage our work better. And then the business environment, which actually impacts the way we work and how people think, what is that people are aspiring, how we negotiate, how we interact with different communities of stakeholders, all these things. So PMI methodology has shifted. Now, all this, with this, they have also added a layer of what they call as value, agility, and tailoring. Now, the conventional method of project management, where you started and went on and on, people are getting impatient. They want to see results instantaneously. It's like, the 2-minute Maggie, they want instant results. And then you keep adding, first you make the Maggie, and then you start adding the masalas, then the vegetables, and then everything else, and start giving it a different flavor based on the necessity of the end users who are going to use the output of your project. All this has been captured by PMI in a book which they call as the Project Management Body of Knowledge, which I'm sure most of you would be aware of. And today we are in the 7th edition. So this PMBOK, what we refer to as the Bible of Project Management, is continuously evolving over the years. In the last 50 years of PMI's existence, and about 30-35 years since the PMBOK came into existence, this has already undergone 7 editions. And PMS has tried to keep the concept of project management relevant to the current times, to the demands of the current business environment. However, what I would like to highlight here is that the previous thought processes, methodologies, and approach have not become irrelevant. They are also relevant. So any good project manager today should know from where the journey has started and which direction we are headed. Otherwise, we'll be like the 5 blind men who are trying to explore the complete elephant of what we call as project management. And the new flavor which has been given to project management is this methodology called disciplined agile. It is rather not a methodology, it's a way of doing your work. So, which we are going to explore in detail in a short while from now. So what is the disciplined agile framework? Firstly, it's a process decision toolkit. It helps us to choose the right process to do our work better. This puts people first, because ultimately it is people who actually understand the requirements of stakeholders and start delivering value to the stakeholders. So the people's capabilities, their strengths and weaknesses, their understanding of the subject, their domain expertise, everything takes precedence over the process. The processes are defined and they evolve around the capabilities of the people who are there as part of the team who are going to deliver the project. This was developed in IBM in 2009, but then first time it was published in 2012, and just 3-4 years back it has started picking up prominence in the marketplace, and it's becoming a skill set which everybody aspires to possess. So with that background, I think it will be worthwhile for us to just understand what this is all about, and then take a balanced decision on how it's going to affect our work. And do we really need to get into acquire the skill sets in a very formal manner in form of a certification, or would you like to do it by self-study and just keep yourself abreast with what is happening in these multiple domains? Most importantly, it's not a methodology. When we say methodology for project management, it is, like for example, you have the traditional project management, then you have Kanban, then you have Scrum, then you have the waterfall method, then you have the iterative method, predictive method, all these things. So disciplined agile is not a methodology. It is based on 17 principles, which I'll not be talking on much here. But most importantly, what I want to talk on is the disciplined agile manifesto, which is relevant to us for this discussion going forward. The manifesto first one speaks of individuals and interactions, what I said, over processes and tools. So the individuals who actually want a service in the form of a project and people who actually deliver that become central, and their interactions and their understandings is becoming relevant. Today, the business environment is such that they want to see instantaneous results. They are not ready to wait for long durations to see the outcome of a initiative that they are taking. So Discipline Agile Manifesto actually works on how this needs to be addressed so that the demands of the stakeholders are met continuously and they're kept satisfied. Next is so when they say consumable solution or comprehensive documentation, it is more important. Traditional project management demanded or actually warranted a lot of documentation to be done, right from identifying stakeholders to collecting requirements, defining the scope, and a whole lot of other activities which had to be done when we are doing it in the knowledge area-based approach. Here, what they're looking at is giving them results first, and then it's not that they've written away the requirement of documentation. The part of documentation still needs to be done because ultimately there's a contract binding the person who wants a service and the group which is delivering a service. So to meet the contractual obligations, documentation has to be done. But what Disciplined Agile tells is that it need not be done immediately, or you don't have to give a lot of precedence and importance to documentation. So first start working on the solutions, start showing results, and then slowly start building up documentation at the back end with a different set of people. So generally in this scenario, what happens is there are multiple teams working. One which is the the team which delivers the product or the solutions, and another team which is working in tandem with this team to do the documentation so that the contractual obligations are fulfilled. And then the other one is they look at the stakeholder collaboration rather than contract negotiation. When they say contract negotiation, the moment you hit a bottleneck, if there's a change which requires to be made, first traditionally what we would do is we do a analysis of the change, the impact, the cost impact, the time impact, and all that. Whereas in Disciplined Agile methodology or in the manifesto, what they say is stakeholders' requirements take precedence or importance over everything else. So first thing is do the work, and then we'll get back to the contractual obligations part of it to see the pricing, the costing, the impact, who is responsible, who is going to pay for it. These things are taking on to this thing. The next manifesto is responding to feedback or following a plan. So the question which comes from a practitioner's perspective is, don't we need a plan? Well, there is a plan at a very high level. Then you start working on the details. But because you are working with the stakeholders in a very close manner on a day-to-day basis, interacting with them, taking their feedback, showing them results, their feedback becomes important. So you respond to their feedback because ultimately they are the ones who have a business need for the product or service that we are offering as project managers or as a project service provider. So you need to respond to their feedback so that it is validated in real time and it stays relevant to their business needs. And most important, the last one is transparency over predictability, which sometimes could be false because a lot of things are unknown, especially in the IT scenario, since this is developed from an IT environment and then now being tried to adopt it and applied to other manufacturing and construction sector. In the IT context, what happens is there are lots of ifs and buts in terms of right from understanding what exactly is the requirement, how we are going to deliver, who is the person who is going to deliver, what are the rates of failures, what is the bugs and bottlenecks and glitches which will come up during the delivery stage, during the rollout stage, all these things. So what the manifesto demands or prescribes is that we have to be transparent on a daily basis, that the moment you hit a bottleneck or there is a glitch, you tell the concerned stakeholders, hey, look, this is what it is all about. So the Disciplined Agile Manifesto works on these 5 principles. Now, what is this disciplined agile? This thing, they have a scaling factor where they have 6 parameters, which actually, when you analyze, yeah. Anybody, anything? Am I
No,
audible?
sir. Yes, sir. You can
I'm
proceed.
audible. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what they have done is they have identified the 6 factors which impact the performance of the teams. The first one is the team size. Now, why is team size critical? Because, managing the complexities, the interpersonal relationships, office politics, level of understanding, everything changes. And the dynamics of managing this diverse team actually scales up depending on the size of the team. So they have a scale. So the size team can vary anywhere from, say, a team of 2 people, so 250 people, 500 people, whatever it is. So they have given different scales. So that is one factor which you have to consider when you are deciding which approach you are going to take for working and delivering the projects. The other one is the geographic distribution of these team members. Now, earlier, traditionally, we wanted everybody to be on site. Now, today, it is possible to work with advancement of technology and available tools that the teams can be geographically distributed, right from sitting in the same office, in the same floor, to different buildings within the same location, geographically different countries, work from home, remote working, everything is possible. This also has its own complexity of management for the project manager, which needs to be factored in. The other one is the organizational distribution. That is how the organizational structure is distributed, how many departments are involved, what is the coordination effort needed between these departments, with multiple departments, multiple business units, geographically distributed business units, contractors who are going to come on board. So a whole lot of factors come into the organizational distribution. Next is the compliance part. Today, with ethics and professional conduct taking importance, there are a lot of compliance which needs to be done, which the technical team may not be conversant with. Financial compliances, statutory, labor compliances. Today, for example, in India, the labor codes have changed. All the labor codes have been consolidated into 4 labor codes. So who is going to take care of it? Are the technical people aware of it? They may not be aware of it. Then financial transactions, across the border transactions, inter-country transactions, tax implications, and then the statutory compliance of the technical work that you're doing itself. All these things have to be factored for when you're doing a project management plan and organizing our teams to do these works. Next is the technical complexities of the work that we are doing. Gone are the days when we could work only on one single technology. Today, any service or product which we have to offer requires a permutation combination of multiple technologies. It could be in terms of hardware, it could be in terms of software, it could be in terms of networking systems, it could be in terms of data storage. Anything you take, there is a whole lot of technical complexities which are involved in this whole scheme of things. And then, of course, the domain complexities which are involved. So what the disciplined agile scaling factor model prescribes is that we assign different scales to all these parameters and then start coming up with our own plan to actually take up the work and ensure that work progresses continuously. Say, for example, when I'm addressing the issue of geographical distribution of people who are not co-located, who are in different geographies, different time zones, I cannot ignore the compliance part of it. That also has to happen. Then management of the domain complexity or the technical complexity, that also has to happen parallelly. So what it implies from a practitioner's perspective is that every member has to be clear where he will contribute. You cannot be a fence sitter and then say, okay, let me check, I will do. You have to very clearly upfront say, this is my strength, this is my weakness. So that comes up in your team size. When you're analyzing your teams, you would identify what are the skill sets that are needed, who will take up what assignment, your RASI metrics, traditionally what we do. All these things keep coming up. So these are some complexities which need to be addressed. So this is actually a very complex methodology or a process which has been defined and documented. So it takes time for us to understand, but at a very high level, what I would like to sum up this complete slide is that they have identified 6 factors which are critical, and in reality in today's business environment where geographical boundaries have vanished and global politics influencing the way we work, these factors are relevant and somebody has to address it. So they put this responsibility on the project team, the project managers, and the business leaders. So now what is the dilemma of the project manager and project management? This still continues. The triple constraint theorem of balancing time, qualities, scope, and cost to ensure quality has not gone. Whether it is disciplined agile or Scrum or Kanban or the traditional project management method, we have to understand the concept of this triple constraint theorem. So as project management professionals, whichever vertical you are specialized in, you might be an agile specialist, you might be a Scrum master, you might be a safe professional, a traditional project manager, you cannot ignore this basic. So this is something which I wanted to highlight and bring it to your notice, that we need to keep track of these basic things, that is scope, time, cost, and quality. There's no escaping from that. So the question which comes is disciplined agile old wine in a new bottle? I think in terms of terminology, there are a lot of terminologies which are coming. I think this started with agile. You know, terminologies like rundown charts, sprint, burn up, burn down, all these terminologies which are there, they have the same conventional meaning, but then they have new terms to define. So for old timers, we have to catch up with the terminologies. The other one is it new wine in an old keg? Definitely yes, because there are principles which are defined or advocated by this disciplined agile methodology, which we have to understand. And then the skill sets which are needed now become totally different. Earlier, we had what we call as domain experts. One person was an expert and he would come, do his work, and he would walk out. Like a surgeon, if he's a specialized surgeon, he'll wait for everybody to do their work. He will come do his part of the work, leave it to the team to stitch up the patient, revive him, put him back onto medication and all, and getting out. But then today, it demands that you are aware of multiple domains. A single domain will not help you. The other one is that new wine in a new bottle. These are all thoughts which crossed my mind when I started exploring disciplined agile and disciplined agile. I always would think, hey, it is the same thing. What is different about it? But then the question is the understanding part of it. How flexible are we to understand this concept? Now, in this disciplined agile, what they say is choose your own ways of working. So depending on that scale model where we had 6 parameters, the way you work will be different when you have a small team geographically distributed with lot of domain complexity, as compared to when you have a large team co-located at one place where the complexities and the compliance part are not much of a challenge. So the project managers should have the intelligence to choose what you want to work. So for that, they are given it a new terminology as choose your wow, which is your ways of working. Whichever way you look at it, I can assure you it is quite interesting and get you a high as you start getting into this subject and start practicing it on a regular basis. So happy practice with disciplined agile.
Sir, can you explain that discipline part, disciplined agile and plain agile?
Which one? See, in plain agile, you look at value delivery and other things. Whereas in disciplined agile, there are a lot of factors where you look at value and also the way you deliver value, how fast you are going to be able to deliver that. That is the fundamental difference between agile and disciplined agile. We'll take that up in the Q&A, right?
Okay, thank you.
So the next question is, what is it in for me as an individual, as managers, and as business leaders, right? I'll just touch 2 or 3 points. I won't spend much time on this. So the first one is, as an individual, you have the traditional methodologies of conventional plan, do, check, act, the knowledge areas, the documentation, defining the scope, interacting with stakeholders, doing stakeholder expectation management, all those things are there. And then when you come back to the disciplined agile one, you have the 6 scaling factors, where you have to see where your organization fits in these on this scale. You have to define the scales, how you want to give the varying numbers on all the 6 axes, and then decide which way you want to do. Ultimately, at the end of it, what is it? It is all about how you juggle all these things to deliver your project successfully. To do that, what we have to do? We have to invest some time in learning. Otherwise, we become non-existent. Whether you like it or not, to keep pace. And if you want to continue keeping yourself excited, you have to invest some time in learning, whether it could be formal learning, company sponsored learning, or self investment for learning. You have to learn. The next one is, you have to adapt to the ways of different working styles. You cannot be rigid about saying this is the way I have been doing and this is the way I'm going to do. Today, I can quote my own experiences. I have people who are, advisors and consultants who are in their 70s and early 80s, who come and say, this is how we have been doing. Now, as a project manager, I need them. I cannot shove them away and tell, okay, get out, I don't need you. I need their advice. I need their expertise. So I have to adapt myself to this whole spectrum of project management practices, which have been there from medieval times to the current times. And disciplined agile is one of these methodologies which is catching up. And it's become a fad. So people speak of agile, people speak of disciplined agile. It's a reality. We have to, the last but most important thing is practicing that. How are you going to practice it? Whether you get an opportunity in your organization to actually practice every skill set that you have learned over the years is a matter of debate. The organizations have their pressures. You have to deliver as per the timelines and commitments made by the organizations, and you may not have the luxury of practicing it. But then you have to devise your own method of practicing it, experimenting, refining, and developing your own style and culture. Today, I'm in the construction industry where people feel that this discipline agile factor is not relevant. But then for me, the team size and the geographic location become relevant, because my designers and architects and special skill sets are located all over the world. We take advice from sound technicians who are sitting in US, petrochemical experts who are sitting in Denmark or Holland someplace. I had to collaborate with them. So I had to come up with my own practices and refine that to see which will work for me in a particular scenario. So I have to define my own ways of working to meet the project requirements. So in this, there are multiple roles that you will play. I'll just come to that. And then as a project manager, what is your dilemma? You have a diverse group of people whom you have to manage. The first one is balancing knowledge versus experience. While the current generation people, due to the access of the internet and Googling, they have a whole repository of knowledge and information with them. But the question is, how is it applied to the workplace? They may not be able to actually translate knowledge into action. Whereas there is another group of people who have vast experience, but their knowledge is outdated. So as managers, you have to bridge these gaps and see that the cross-pollination between these two verticals or these two group of stakeholders happen. Both are important to you. You cannot ignore either of them. And with that, you have to create synergy. There will be ego clashes. There will be difference of opinions. There will be people who will be wanting to quit your team because of certain reasons. As a project manager or as any business manager or anything, you have to create this synergy amongst your team members. And the manager's life is becoming challenging day by day because of all these new developments which are happening. It's not an easy job. Sometimes you have to be in the front of the group leading them. Sometimes you have to be at the back to let your team find their own pace, to find their own relationships, and then work as a harmonious, integrated team. The last one is as a business leader, what is it there for you? It's a very tight rope. You have profits, you have the top line, you have the bottom line, you have stakeholder expectations, you have the board's expectations, you have the shareholders' expectations, you have your employees' expectations, a whole lot of things which business leaders have to manage. So for this, three things in the current context, one is reskilling has to be done. Whether you do it formally, informally, recognize people for acquiring new skills on their own, taking their own initiative, this activity has to happen, and you have to come up with innovative ways to ensure that your people are acquiring new skills relevant to the times and the demands of the business environment. The next one is retention of your employees. There is a tendency that, okay, if it's not good here, I'm going. Some people will keep threatening you. So one is you should know when to take a call that, okay, boss, you can leave. But to do that, you should have a backup. So you should have a succession planning, which you have done, or you should know whom to retain, how to motivate them, what motivates them. In this context, Maslow's needs of hierarchy, everything comes into play. You should know what will actually motivate people. How can I motivate an individual? So balancing of knowledge and skills has to be worked with, retention, and then reorganizing your teams, because disciplined agile way of working demands that teams are reorganized and there is flexibility in the ways what you call skill sets are introduced into the team and withdrawn from the team at the right time. So that balancing act has to be done as a business leader. So in this context, I'd just like to highlight here that PMI has done phenomenal work in this domain of disciplined agile. Something which was very close to IBM has now been brought into the public domain by PMI. They have courses, they have lectures, they have talks which they're organizing. So collaborating with PMI, I think will give you more insights into the subject. Just for your information, I thought I'll just give these 4 bullet points about PMI, right? We have set the benchmarks in the domains of project, program, and portfolio management. And then there are 10 globally acknowledged certifications, which is something like, the benchmarking an individual's capability on what they can deliver for you, so that you as a project manager or a business leader can actually take your attention of this particular vertical where you have people certified by PMI and concentrate on better things. So as I close my talk, the first thing what I did is, it's a very superficial run through that I could do in this last small 30-35 minutes of my talk. I know I may not have been done, full justice to the subject, but then the objective was to just give you an insight into this concept of disciplined agile. You will have to dive deep, whether you do it in a formal manner or informal manner. You have to invest time and effort. The other one is, when you look at disciplined agile, perspective matters. From what level are you looking at? Whether you are looking at it from an individual level, from a manager's level, or a business leader's level, or as the user of a service from another organization for your own projects. So there are a lot of times when you bring a vendor on board or somebody to give you some part of services for a major project or program that you are doing. So how you look at it matters when you try to understand this subject of disciplined agile. And last, it is an orchestra where everybody has to chip in. You could be the business leader who's just orchestrating the whole business unit to deliver something, or you could be a project manager leading a small group of people, or you could be an individual who's contributing to the overall effort of the organization. But then it is an orchestra, and you have to involve yourself in what is happening and can't shy away from saying it is not my job, somebody else is doing it. Then the system will not work. It's a system which has to work. So even if one element actually does not work, there are bound to be failures, and the whole methodology or the whole process approach can fail and have disastrous results. So John F. Kennedy long back had said that change is the way of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. So past glories, I did this, I used that methodology. It's all good for telling stories and creating interest for people to explore the past. But then it is the future which will drive organizations. And as individuals, professionals, we have to equip ourselves to be relevant to the future. The past and present are all history. It's good for books and for discussions, but it is the future which matters today, because what we are going to write today will become the past. So with this, I have finished my brief talk. I hope I've been able to kindle some interest amongst you for this topic. If there are any questions, I will take it on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant General Shri. It was an excellent presentation. We have few questions.
Please.
Ajla, can you read out? Ajla Bashir, can you read out the questions in the chat box?
Adla, or shall I read out, sir? Akila here.
Well, I think I see one question.
Well,
Okay.
sir, I'll tell you, how is contingency planning and dispute management factored into agile technology? This is a question from Professor Hariharan.
Okay. Now, the very concept of agile methodology is about delivering incremental value as we keep progressing. So when you develop the design, the first thing is show them the architecture. If it's an IT project, you show them the architecture. This is how your software will look like. This is how the data storage will be. This is where the data will be stored. This is what are the software. And then once that is signed off, then you go to the next level. So what happens is, in such cases in the agile methodology, dispute management happens at very incremental stages. It's not something which comes up at the end of the project when it gets magnified into a large scale dispute. So this your project management team or the people who are actually working on the project should have some people management skills to convince them on why a particular thing can be done or cannot be done. And if it can be done, what is the cost implication, the time implication and all that. And the contingencies is again a very, it again goes by thumb rule, though there is nothing documented as such on the efforts which I can use as a benchmark to justify the contingency which I need. But the major, again, advantage is, since I'm moving step by step, I should be able to assess the requirements of contingencies at every stage of my work stage, which will be predefined at the start of the project.
Thank you, sir. Another question is, can you highlight on the monitoring tools of project execution, softwares?
Well, there are plenty of softwares. Most of them come with a cost. Otherwise, to be honest, a lot of projects which I drive, we use the simple Excel sheets and the MS Access, which is one component of the MS Office package. It's a very powerful tool. I would urge each one of you to go and just explore that, including preparing your schedules and assigning resources and giving dependencies. The Access package permits all these things. So now when you say monitoring, the inputs which are needed are what first you have to get into your silos. First one is, what is it that you had planned? And then monitoring is whether I'm going as per a plan. So for that, even a basic Excel sheet will do. Otherwise, MS Office, or sorry, MS Projects is there. Primavera has come up with it as new, it's updated versions, Primavera, and then the Primavera Oracle has bought in what we call as a new tool, which is the Aconex, which is a very highly integrated tool where document integration, document management, everything happens. So the spectrum of tools available for project monitoring is huge. Choice is yours.
Yes. Well, I think the initial question can be answered now, like what is the discipline part in the disciplined agile, might be can.
That's a $1 million question, which I am trying to decipher for a very long time. But then what they have done is, in agile methodology, you go based on what you understand, where there is still dependency on the traditional methods of project management and delivery. Contract documentations are demanded and all that. Whereas in disciplined agile, depending on those 6 scaling factors, you prioritize what needs to be addressed first. This is done in consultation with the stakeholders or the end users of your service. So you collectively agree to say, okay, if a compliance needs to be done first, as per your understanding of the whole system, you jointly agree to attend to the compliance first and then get on to the domain, managing the domain complexity or the technology, choosing which technology to use. These sort of things come in. So in a way, what if you want to look at exactly how discipline is brought into agile methodologies, identifying these 6 factors and deciding what needs to be done first, so that you don't miss out on something which is critical and come back 10 steps after going forward. Otherwise, there have been a lot of instances, even in agile methodology, where a lot of things have been overlooked for various reasons. So in this case, the team sits together, agrees as to what needs to be done, and then come to a common agreement. That is where the discipline is enforced into the way of working. That's why it's called as discipline. That is what I've been able to decipher from my reading of the literature available on the subject. I'll be very honest with you.
Great, sir. I also got enlightened with that. Well, another generic question is, in WAS, is project management applied by any nation?
Well, I think the concept of project management has come from the armed forces all over the world. So right from assessing the strength of the enemy to deciding what strategy to use, how many resources to use, whether you want to use only the army, or you want to use the Navy, Air Force, all these things are part of a very comprehensive strategic planning. And then you develop your tactical plannings and then the operational plans, which are actually executed on ground. So the principles of project management are applied, though we do not refer to them as project management plans. We call them as strategic plans, tactical plans, operational plans, depending on the level at which it is done. But then these principles are there and it is part of our DNA. Like you speak to any uniform person across the world. I'm not saying only in India. We go about everything in a logical manner and try to then ensure that the work happens in one shot. There is no second chance. We don't plan for a second chance.
Great. Well, how to resolve conflicts between millennials and experienced within the team?
Question. It's a very fine balancing act which one has to do. Jokes apart, everyone brings their own value. The only thing is, I think, because of the awareness on account of the social media, the millennials are slightly impatient in nature and they feel that the surface skimming is good for them. So, whereas the experienced people, we want to go about in a very conventional manner, address all angles before we take the first step. So those things are there. It's a reality. The only thing is, as a project manager or as business leader, you have to pair them up, and once in a while, you have to either sweet talk to each one of these groups to accommodate the shortcomings or the uncertainties of these people, or talk tough to ensure that they chip in together with whatever they have to pull as a team. Ultimately, it's a question of how you integrate. It becomes more of people skill management, where you have to manage these millennials. Simple things can actually put off a seasoned person. Is like, an error in documenting, writing business proposal. They would have, oh, missed something. And all they have to say, sorry, sir, I missed it. But then as an experienced person, it becomes a very serious issue for me that this was a very critical aspect. It has been overlooked, ignored, impatient, irresponsible. You can use all adjectives you want. But the question is whether you use these adjectives directly at his face in the first go, or guide that fellow and mentor him to do a work better, and at an appropriate moment, highlight all these things and tell them, hey, this is what it is. Similarly, for the experienced people, you have to tell them this is how the younger generation is. So as managers and business leaders, it's a very challenging task. It's only, purely situational, depending on what is the community that you have when you say experienced and millennials. So depending on each one's temperament, you'll have to come up with your own recipe. That is where that choose your ways of working becomes critical. How you handle each one. There is no fixed template for doing this balancing act. Completely situational, and you learn by experience.
So, sir, the leadership styles keep changing.
Yes.
So, yes, another generic question is, can you offer your comments on the haphazard manner in which our embassies handle the present problem of bringing our citizens and students from the war-prone area?
Well, I think within the existing constraints, when you look at if I look at the scale of the factoring scale of the disciplined agile, one is the team size has to be huge. They are all geographically distributed. The complexities are different because the equations of Poland with Ukraine and Russia and India are different compared to the other countries where we have deployed these 4 teams now. If you look at it, we have deployed 4 different teams somewhere to manage these things. So there are a lot of technical complexities in terms of people reaching that location and from there shifting them back to India. But all said and done, I think they're not rushed into this task immediately. They have done their homework, come up with some plan, and they're trying to deploy that. But then it's a very fluid plan that they have. They have no fixed plans that this is that's why they're not making any commitments on timelines or how they're going to go about it. Based on how the drama unfolds, they have very seasoned people there who are going to understand this global dynamic, global policies and their impacts, and how to mobilize local resources, how to get people together. So they're working in a very agile manner, I would say, though they have the traditional project management of approach of saying what needs to be done, except the scope. I think the cost, time, quality of their services is everything is fluid. They may succeed, they may not succeed. Today, I think yesterday or something, we read about some students being killed. Now, quality, if you look at it from a project perspective, the quality has been diluted because we have let somebody die. But then is it in my control? It's not in my control. So they're developing something, but I think in my opinion, they've done a fairly good job because they're not jumped into the task straight away. It's the knee-jerk reaction. They have studied the dynamics, understood where people are heading, where they need to deploy embassy people to pick up our people and send them back home safely. So that's my assessment in terms of a project manager. Diplomatically, yes, I know I'm not competent to comment on that.
And actually, there are full of praises of your way of the presentation style and your slides also. They have made comments that it's a combo of abstract and concrete images, and so actually people are very impressed with your presentation style too, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
I think there's one more. Where and all there had to be changes to apply disciplined agile for individual, personal, or career development improvement.
Okay. Good. Now, if you look at that again, I take you back to that scaling factor. Depending on which environment you are working in. So, for example, if you're part of a global team, today we had the pandemic and we had people working from home, people who had communication skills, people who had good interpersonal skills, who had the capability to build rapport with their peers and team members, spread with whom they are not even met. They have been able to perform very well. People who had these challenges have slowly got into, what you call levels of frustration, not able to deliver. So these things have been coming in. So if you start applying, that's what I always tell is, your life itself is a project. You have to manage your project. You have to understand your business environment, where you are working. I can give myself as an example. I have, from raw civil engineer, I moved into the army, did soldiering for about 23 years, and then I came out. I worked in the IT sector. I developed a lot of IT tools for governments, for private companies, then worked with educational institutions, worked with construction industry, worked with healthcare, worked on government projects. Now, depending on where I want to go, I will have to invest my time and energy to equip myself and understand the business environment in which I'm going to operate. That is where this concept of project management comes in, because in traditional project management, what do we have? We have one is what you call as the organizational process assets, which is my own strengths and weaknesses. And then you have the environmental factors, which is how the industry operates, what are the global demands, what are the global requirements which are there. So you have to keep yourself abreast with what is happening and acquire knowledge relevant to the areas in which you are going to operate. There could be formal learning, it could be informal learning. In my case, I can just give you an example. All that I've been doing has been informal learning. Because there was a necessity of me to handle people, I studied about people management. And then since I was studying, I decided to go and join a course and evaluate myself against a benchmark of exams where they evaluate a person's knowledge level in terms of HR management. So I did that. Then there was a necessity of financial management. So like that, even the disciplined agile, to be very honest, you may not find anybody from the construction industry who's taken a disciplined agile certification. But then I wanted to understand this subject. So I studied. And then I said, let me just check if my studying is in the correct direction and whether I have understood it correctly. So I took up a benchmark examination, which is the DASSM, and I got it. So like that, you have to have that zeal to learn and keep yourself abreast and relevant to the times. So it's a pure individual choice in which domain you want to go. It could be technical, it could be managerial, right? You have to choose which stream you want to go into. If you want to go in purely technical streams, the subjects that you would like to explore would be different. If you want to get into the management side, whether it is pure people management, business management, techno management. So if you have to do techno management, you should know technology, you should know management, right? So individual choices, but then point is you have to invest efforts, manage, understand, and analyze your own aspirations as a project. And to materialize your own aspirations, you have to execute it like a project. You should have timelines as to by when I will complete this, what timelines I'm looking at, and then plan your moves accordingly. Apart from this, I don't think I can give much of an insight into this question.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll hand it back to MC of the day.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge in this domain within a very short time. So now I invite Anjana Sabu to deliver the vote of thanks.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's the time for vote of thanks. And on the behalf of IEEE Kerala Section and Intersociety Weekly Webinar Series, I extend a very heartfelt gratitude to the Honorable Speaker of the Day, Lieutenant Col.L.Shri Harsha, sir, who have given an excellent section about the disciplinary agile, the new arsenal of a project manager. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Your PPT was very nice. Thank you, sir, for the section. And I am extending my gratitude towards Ravindra sir, who helped to organize this event. Thank you, sir. And I would also like to thank all the volunteers who helped to run this program smoothly. And last but not least, I would like to thank all the delegates who have participated in this webinar. Once again, thank you all. Thanks a lot for making this event a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you, Adityan. The next session of Intersociety Weekly Webinar Series will be a panel discussion on Break the Bias. So hope you all to see you. Till then, thank you and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Good night, sir.
Thank you. Good night. Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.